Are you ready to dive into the wonderful world of one of the greatest writers of all time? Today, we will uncover the secrets of the life of a man whose works shook the world of literature. Meet Fyodor Dostoevsky, a genius whose life was no less exciting than his novels. Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the greatest Russian writers and thinkers, was born on November 11th, 1821 in Moscow. His father was a doctor in a Moscow hospital, and Dostoevsky's mother, Maria, was the daughter of a merchant who had lost his fortune after Napoleon's invasion. His mother was a woman of deeply religious and gentle soul. These two figures had a significant influence on the formation of young Dostoevsky's worldview. According to the memories of Fyodor Mikhailovich, his parents worked tirelessly to give their children a good education and bring them up as worthy people. The first lessons of literacy and writing the future writer received from his mother. His first books, religious literature, which the pious parent was fond of. The father gave the children lessons in Latin. Since childhood, the writer was subject to seizures, which, however, quickly passed. In the family over the disease, Fedya laughed. It is strange that even the father doctor could not diagnose his son with epilepsy, which in the future was confirmed. The incurable disease formed the style of life and creativity of Dostoevsky. As Fyodor Dostoevsky said, every time a moment before a seizure, he felt a burst of unimaginable happiness. Epilepsy was inherited by his son Alyosha, who died in childhood during the first violent seizure. Epilepsy attacks were often used by the writer's wife, Anna Snitkina, to empty her husband's pockets and read letters from his mistress Apollinaria Suslova. One of the most terrible childhood memories of the writer, the death of a girl peer. The unfortunate was about 9 years old. She survived the violence and died in the hospital. The image of the tortured child would later appear repeatedly in Dostoevsky's novels. This memory haunts me as the most terrible sin, and I executed Stavrogin in B.E.'s with this crime, said the writer. From a young age, Dostoevsky showed interest in literature and art. At his father's insistence, in 1838, he entered the engineering school in St. Petersburg. Later, he would call this training a mistake, which spoiled his future. At the engineering school, the writer organized a literary circle and created several theatrical plays in the early 1840s. Mary Stuart, Jew Yankel, Boris Godunov. These manuscripts have not survived. Young Dostoevsky severely experienced the death of Pushkin, which occurred a few months after the death of his mother. Brother Fyodor, in conversations with his older brother several times, repeated that if we did not have a family mourning, he would ask his father's permission to wear mourning for Pushkin, recalled the writer's brother Alexei. After the death of his father, Dostoevsky experienced a deep mental crisis, according to a number of researchers, also became the impetus for thinking about what is crime. It is no secret that in the disgusting image of Fyodor Karamazov, Dostoevsky prescribed his father. Why did he take such revenge on him? All the troubles began after the death of Fyodor's mother, because of which the writer's father literally went crazy. He languished, talked to his dead wife, and he himself answered in a female voice. Michael Dostoevsky began to drink heavily and find solace in the arms of peasant girls, including very young 10 and 14-year-olds. As a result, the writer's father suffered a terrible death. He was strangled by his own serfs in the village of Cheremoshnia. Among the killers were the fathers of the girls with whom the Baron liked to seclude himself. Having completed his studies, he served as a lieutenant engineer, but soon devoted himself to literature. His first novel, Poor People, published in 1846, was highly appreciated by the legislators of literary fashion of those years. It was an innovative work representing a social drama in the form of letters. The literary circle began to actively carry Dostoevsky in such a way that the young writer became embarrassed. Everything he said was passed from mouth to mouth with the refrain, "So said Dostoevsky." Joy was short-lived. Quite quickly, the circle was disappointed in Dostoevsky. His next works were worse than Poor People, and in addition, Fyodor began to behave nasty and arrogant. Yes, we are puffed up with Dostoevsky the genius. It is some pimple on the nose of literature, decided the honorable writers. After failing in the literary circle, Fyodor Dostoevsky began to look for new company. Acquaintance with the socialist Petrashevsky radically changed the fate of Fyodor Dostoevsky. He participates in Friday meetings and in time entered a secret society, which was headed by the communist Speshnev. The head of the circle himself was a strange man and loved to apathetize the public. He walked in a four-cornered cylinder and once fell into the Kazan Cathedral in a lady's dress. The deception was quickly revealed because Petrashevsky did not shave off his beard. But when a policeman tried to escort him out of the cathedral with the words, "It seems to me that you are a disguised woman," Petrashevsky yelled loudly, "It seems to me that you are a man in disguise." In general, one could not help but fall under the charm of such a citizen. They met on Fridays, did nothing wrong, and engaged in generally harmless nonsense. There, at a meeting of the circle, Dostoevsky once read Belinsky's letter to Gogol. Now it is studied by all school children, but then it was forbidden. The members of the circle themselves did not expect to be arrested. "Here you are, grandmother, and Yuriev Day," they joked on the day of arrest, April 26, 1849. No one believed that they would be sentenced to death. But in 1848, the whole of Europe was burning with revolutions, and the government was very afraid that the flames would spread to Russia. After 8 months of imprisonment in the Peter and Paul fortress, the members of the circle were led to be shot. It was bitterly cold outside, and the members of the circle were in light clothes. They saw a scaffold covered with black carts nearby, and oblong coffins covered with burlap. The condemned were divided into 3 groups and given caps and hoods. The first 3 were brought out. The soldiers raised their rifles. Then there was a drum beat. At the very last moment, the execution was cancelled. At that moment, one of the condemned was touched by a mental breakdown, and Dostoevsky suddenly believed in God and experienced an incredible rapture, which he later compared to the rapture before convulsions. Dostoevsky attached great importance to the person of Christ and considered him the ideal of man in the flesh. He could not imagine his life without the fusion of happiness and suffering. In the novel The Idiot, Dostoevsky reflected the feelings that he experienced while waiting for the execution. It is known that the writer was greatly impressed by the terrible in its naturalistic painting Dead Christ in the Coffin by the artist Hans Holbein the Younger, which later repeatedly appeared in his works. At the penal colony, where the writer was exiled instead of execution, he suffered from loneliness and alienation. Other prisoners did not accept him because of his noble title. Unlike other convicts, the writer was not deprived of civil rights. For 4 years he read the only book, the Gospel, which was given to him by the Decembrists' wives in Tobolsk. This was the cause of the writer's spiritual rebirth, change of beliefs. Dostoevsky became a deeply religious man. Memories of the penal servitude were used by the writer in the creation of Notes from the Dead House and other manuscripts. The accession to the throne of Alexander II brought the novelist a pardon in 1857. He was allowed to publish his works. After his exile, Dostoevsky served as a soldier in Semipalatinsk. There he met the only educated woman, Maria. Maria Isaeva, a Frenchwoman by birth, at the time of meeting Fyodor in early 1854, was married and had a young son. 29-year-old passionate and exalted lady met the writer in Semipalatinsk, where she arrived with her husband. She was well educated, inquisitive, lively, and impressionable, but unhappy. Her husband suffered from alcoholism, was weak-willed and nervous. Maria loved society, dancing. She longed for provincial life and poverty. Dostoevsky became for her a ray of light in a dark kingdom. The defenselessness and fragility of the woman awakened the writer's desire to protect her and guard her like a child. For some time, Maria kept a friendly distance from Fyodor Mikhailovich. The test for their feelings was almost 2 years of separation. Isaeva's husband was transferred to serve 600 versts from Semipalatinsk. Dostoevsky was in despair. In 1855, he received news of the death of Maria's husband. Maria found herself in a foreign city alone, without means and with a child in her arms. The writer immediately offered her hand and heart, but they were married 2 years later. After Dostoevsky's release from penal servitude, the couple returned to St. Petersburg. In Barnaul, the writer had an epileptic seizure, which frightened Maria. She accused her husband of concealing from her a serious illness, which at any time could end in death. This situation alienated the spouses from each other. 7-year marriage did not bring them happiness. Soon Maria moved to Tver and then returned to St. Petersburg, where she slowly died of consumption. The writer at this time was traveling abroad with Apollinaria Suslova. Apollinaria, an emancipated young lady, memoirist, and writer, was the daughter of a former serf. Dostoevsky met Suslova after one of his speeches at a student party. Apollinaria was a beauty, slender with blue eyes, intelligent and strong-willed face, red hair. She was the first to confess her love to the writer. Dostoevsky needed a sincere attitude. The novel began. Apollinaria accompanied Dostoevsky abroad, and he helped the novice writer in her creative development, prints her stories in time. Suslova represented the nihilistic youth. She despised the conventions and prejudices of the old world. Therefore, in every way rebelled against the stale foundations and morality. The girl became the prototype of Pauline, the gambler, and Nastasia Filipovna, the idiot, and others. When he returned from abroad, he was struck by the changes that had taken place with his wife. Wishing to alleviate her suffering, he transported his wife to Moscow. She died painfully for a year. The character of Mary, her fate and death embodied in the literary version, in the image of Katenka Marmeladova. Maria's son, Pavel, an idler and deadbeat, Dostoevsky will support all his life. At the same time, Pavel masterfully tormented the writer's second wife, and she was afraid to admit it to Fyodor Dostoevsky. "What kind of Baden-Baden are you going to?" "I have an unfashionable coat, by the way," Pavel could easily say, and not feel the slightest remorse. Fyodor, on the contrary, he blamed himself for the fact that while his wife was ill, he was having an affair with Pauline Suslova. Therefore, to leave the insolent Paul at the mercy of fate could not. Soon after the departure of his wife died, and his own brother, leaving behind a pile of debts. Fyodor Mikhailovich also took in his brother's family, provided money for the widow and her children, and paid debts that did not exist. Everyone came to him and said, "Your brother owed me money." "How much?" Dostoevsky asked, and obediently wrote out a bill of exchange. So he handed out promissory notes, 25,000 rubles, which in our money is translated as $20,000. Cunning book publishers, knowing that Dostoevsky is mired in debt, paid him per page much less than other authors. They knew that Fyodor was in dire financial straits and would write for any pennies. For a long time, his fee per printed page was 150 rubles, while Tolstoy received 500 rubles for the same work. Dostoevsky's second wife, Anna Snitkina, was 24 years younger than him. She came from a family of an official, had literary talent, and idolized Dostoevsky. She met the writer by chance. After the death of her father, she graduated from stenography courses and entered the service of Fyodor Dostoevsky as an assistant. Their acquaintance occurred 2 years after the death of the writer's first wife. The girl helped Dostoevsky to fulfill the contract signed with the publisher. In 26 days, they jointly wrote and designed the manuscript of The Gambler. A new stage in the work of the writer is associated with disillusionment with the socialist idea. He is interested in the philosophical component of social issues, problems of the spiritual existence of man. Dostoevsky's novels, Humiliated and Insulted, A Square Anecdote, Notes from Underground, appeared. The writer often traveled abroad in search of new themes, but everything ended with the fact that he lost huge sums at roulette in Wiesbaden. The dramas and experiences of this period of Dostoevsky's life became the basis for the new novel, The Gambler. Trying to get out of financial problems, the writer concludes an extremely unfavorable contract for the publication of all his works and sits down to write a new creation. The novel Crime and Punishment, 1865 to 1866. While working on Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky told the girl about the plot of the new novel, in which an elderly artist falls in love with a girl. This was a kind of declaration of love. Anna Snitkina agreed to become the wife of the writer. After the wedding, she had to endure the horror that Maria Isaeva knew. Dostoevsky had 2 epileptic seizures during the evening. This fact the woman took as atonement for the immense happiness that the writer gave her. After the wedding, the newlyweds went to Europe. All the trip and life abroad Snitkina described in her diary. She had to struggle with the writer's gambling addiction, solve financial issues, and bring up 4 children born in marriage to Dostoevsky. 2 daughters, Sonia died in infancy, and Lyubov, 2 sons, Alexei and Fyodor. She became a muse for the writer. Left a widow at the age of 35, Anna withdrew from the world. The woman never settled her personal life after the writer's death. She devoted herself to preserving his legacy. She published a complete collection of his works, founded the Dostoevsky School in Staraya Russa, worked on her memoirs. Few people know that in Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky, without knowing it, described the death of his favorite sister, whose childhood he had already described in Poor People. Dostoevsky was long gone when Varvara Koropina died. On the eve of the new year, 1893, the woman came to her daughter and said that she saw a strange dream. As if she were young, naked to the waist, and terribly bloated. It must mean that I am about to die, a death that is not my own, she added. The Dostoevsky family took dreams seriously. Not a month later, the dream came true. Koropina was found in her own house, half burned, so that it was hard to recognize her, due to the fact that the old lady lived very frugal, did not keep servants, and engaged in rental housing. The newspapers immediately reacted to the death of the note, died a victim of avarice. Initially, it was believed that the grandmother knocked over a lamp and burned to death. Later, it turned out that the sister of Fyodor Dostoevsky was killed by her acquaintances, the janitor and his relative. Moreover, the stories about the murder of the woman are strikingly similar to the work of Dostoevsky. The murderer jumped out from behind the partition, with his right hand clamped Koropina's mouth and nose, and with his left hand grabbed her waist and pressed her against him. Koropina was so frightened that she did not even shriek, but only looked at the janitor so pitifully that he, according to him, cried. Interesting fact. In Dostoevsky's time, views on age were different from ours. Thus, the old woman percent counter. Alyona Ivanovna was only 42 years old. In 1867, Dostoevsky married Anna Snitkina, who became his support and assistant. Together, they endured many hardships, including his penchant for gambling and chronic financial problems. Dostoevsky had one but fiery passion, and it was not women, but roulette. Knowing this passion, he was abandoned even by his cunning mistress Apollinaria Suslova, realizing that she could not cope with such a contagion. The second wife of the writer, Anna Snitkina, tolerated all the quirks of her husband. At his first request, laid dresses, fur coats, corsets, rings, just to get Fede a little more money. After the birth of his daughter, Fyodor stopped the game, but the girl died, and the desperate father again went into all sorts of things. The next work, the novel The Idiot, 1868, was born in agony. The main character, Prince Mishkin, is the writer's ideal. Deeply moral, honest, kind, and sincere man, the embodiment of Christian humility and virtue, the hero of the novel is similar to the author. They have similar views on life, religiosity, and even epilepsy. Dostoevsky is, without exaggeration, known all over the world. In Japan, it is largely thanks to the film adaptation of The Idiot, directed by Akira Kurosawa, which moved the action from Russia to post-war Japan. Fyodor Dostoevsky worked on the novel Lives of a Great Sinner. The work was not completed, but the author used its material to create Besov and The Brothers Karamazov, where he conceptualized the growth of radical and terrorist beliefs of the intelligentsia. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, Besov became incredibly popular in France. The book was interpreted as a novel of prediction, explaining the essence of the coup. The Brothers Karamazov, his last and perhaps most significant novel, was published in 1880. This sweeping work covers a wide range of topics, from religion to free will. Einstein considered the brothers Karamazov the most penetrating book he had ever read. It was planned that the brothers Karamazov will be only the first part of the novel, The Story of the Great Sinner, but the writer was prevented by death. Dostoevsky's most famous novels are striking in their bleakness. Critics counted 21 deaths in Crime and Punishment, 31 in The Idiot, 15 in The Imp, 34 in The Teenager, and 43 in The Brothers Karamazov. Life path of Dostoevsky cut short by chronic bronchitis, which took place against the background of tuberculosis and pulmonary emphysema. The writer leaves life at the 60th year of life in January 1881. The work of the writer was appreciated during his lifetime. On the grave of Dostoevsky, embossed lines from the Gospel, "Truly, truly, I say to you, if a grain of wheat falling into the ground does not die, it will remain alone, and if it dies, it will bear much fruit." These same lines were the epigraph to The Brothers Karamazov. The writer's work was appreciated during his lifetime. He was popular and famous, but the real fame came to him after his death. Allusions to Dostoevsky's works can be found in many of Woody Allen's films. Crime and Punishment is read by characters in Life of Pi, Match Point, and the TV series Desperate Housewives. American classicist Kurt Vonnegut, born on the same day as Dostoevsky, but nearly a century apart, believed that everything there is to know about life could be found in The Brothers Karamazov. William Faulkner's library included B.C., Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, and The Brothers Karamazov. I reread him just about every year. His skill, his penetration of the human soul, his capacity for compassion make him a writer many would like to approach if they could. He was one of those who left an indelible mark, said the American novelist. The Guardian editorial board has listed The Brothers Karamazov as one of the 100 greatest novels of all time. The book ranks 29th on the list.
Dostoevsky is the most quoted Russian classic in the scientific world. Among foreign authors, this honorable place is occupied by Shakespeare. Dostoevsky's works were highly appreciated by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. So ends our journey through the life of Fyodor Dostoevsky, a man who took us to the depths of the human soul and showed us the beauty of complex emotions and ideas. His words live forever, and his legacy continues to inspire generations of readers and thinkers. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories about the great men of history. See you in the next video.